Can anyone hear me now? That's it, good. Morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of the Foreign Ministry. Bienvenidos. I can't quite remember how to say that in Portuguese or any other languages, but it's a real pleasure to see so many people here. My name's Jude Webber. I'm the Financial Times correspondent here in Ireland, but I spent the 21 years before coming to Ireland 2 years ago in Latin America in various different places. First of all in Peru, then in Argentina covering Chile, Paraguay, Uruguay, and also then for the last 8 years in Mexico, covering Mexico and all the way down through Central America and occasionally little bits of the Caribbean as well. So, so that's sort of my qualification for being here. And I thought, as I got dressed this morning, I thought I'd put on my favorite Mexican skirts here. However, this being Ireland, I also had to put on a big, thick, woolly jumper as well. Anyway, this is the first Latin American and Caribbean Business and Economic Forum. It's part of the Global Ireland programme, which is a strategic focus of the Foreign Ministry. What we're going to do today, you'll know already from the programme, is we have a very full day of interesting panels with experts, business figures from the region, just to tease out some of the opportunities, to talk about some of the trends. I think innovation, sustainable growth, these will be very, very strong themes, and connectivity. Obviously, there's an awful lot to talk about. There's never really, in my experience, never really a dull moment in Latin America. When I moved to Mexico, for example, from Argentina, after being in Peru, and in Peru, I moved to Peru in 2000 when Alberto Fujimori was briefly still president and then very speedily wasn't, and there were earthquakes and all sorts of things happening. And then I moved to Argentina, which was a wild roller coaster time economically. And then I moved to Mexico, and Mexico had a president who'd just been on the cover of Time, saving Mexico. The PRI were back. They were supposed to be a new, improved political force. Everything was going to go really well. And I was slightly terrified that I wouldn't really know what to write about because it was good news. However, since moving here, it seems like the region's going from strength to strength. So obviously, I was holding it back personally. But there's a lot of good news, I feel like. Certainly, I was back in Mexico this summer just on holiday, and it really feels somehow much richer, much more stable, you know, many more opportunities. And I think all the business people on the panels that we have today, and all of the people talking about business promotion as well, will have a lot to say about that. So we have very strong representation here. We have foreign ministers from 3 Caribbean countries. We have also the foreign ministers of Chile, Argentina, and Peru joining us via video link. We have representatives from the state level, from Baja California in Mexico, and Sergipe, if I've pronounced that correctly, in Brazil. And we have public sector representatives and obviously a very strong private sector attendance for the conference, whose theme is expanding opportunity. So we'll talk about the links between Ireland and the broad Latin American and Caribbean region over time, how they're evolving, where they're going, about the strategic importance to do more things together, the geopolitical landscape, which, as we saw in the Argentine elections at the weekend, is changing fast in some places, instability in the world, and you know, the shared culture that Ireland and Latin America have. So the idea is that this will be the first of very many forums, so I think congratulations for being here where it all began. And with that, I'll hand over to Rory de Burke to deliver some welcome remarks. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Jude. You're all very welcome here to Dublin Castle. Bienvenidos a todos, que sejam bem-vindos. Or as we say in Ireland, Kate Mila Fáilte. We don't do understatement. That means 100,000 welcomes. And I hope by the end of today we'll have 100,000 new connections that are made. Very conscious that there are people who travelled a long way to be with us today, and starting this early in the morning when the time difference is working against you means that your presence here today is doubly welcome, and we owe it to you to make this the best day that we can. It's important for us because, as Jude said, this is our very first business and economic forum where we're building these links or enhancing the links that are already there between Ireland, Latin America, the Caribbean, with an emphasis on trade and investment in both directions. We have a real sense in the Department of Foreign Affairs and across government that it's beyond time to weave the tapestry of our relationships with Latin America and the Caribbean into a much stronger and more beautiful piece of fabric than it has been. But if we haven't been there already, today is the best day to start. There is so much that we share culturally, politically and economically going back centuries. Sometimes we fail, I think, to maybe capitalise on that as much as we can in both directions. But those connections means that there is much potential. And as Jude mentioned, you know, she has seen over her long engagement with Latin America, you know, countries' economies going from strength to strength. We've seen over my lifetime the Irish economy going from strength to strength. And that means that we have a particular opportunity to, as the slogan, the lema for today's event, we have a particular moment now when it's time, I think, to expand our opportunities. To build on those existing trade and investment relationships, and to use that as a springboard to broader enhancement of our relationships. Today is just one component, I think, of that expanding broader economic relationship between Ireland, Latin America and the Caribbean. You know, we have, in order to really enhance those relationships, invested in new embassies in Colombia and Chile in recent years, opened up regional offices for Central America and the Caribbean, and I think we have more to do. We've seen the establishment of new business chambers and networks, and I think that's really important, that private sector infrastructure which drives connections, which drives ideas, which drives business decisions, deals, and the next generation of relationships. And we've seen ministerial visits and trade-focused events in both directions, and it's great to have so many ministers from the Caribbean here today. I think to underpin that too, we've decided to invest in our cooperation on education, because well-educated workforces, good research, drive the kinds of investment that we all want, but also enable the kind of new generation ideas that will push the next generation of entrepreneurs forward. We've also introduced and expanded people-to-people programs such as working holiday agreements, scholarships, which we call fellowships, and a Young Leaders Exchange, which is taking place this week. And I think there's so much more we can do, both as Ireland and Ireland as an EU member state, to drive these relationships forward. And I want to acknowledge in that it's not just a foreign ministry effort in Ireland, but something that involves a whole of government approach. All of the Irish government departments, our state agencies, are at your disposal, as well as our embassies. And really critical to this are businesses. It's the people who go out there, who hustle, who work hard to make the connections, to get the deals, to make the investments, who take risks. And I think we all know, as civil servants, as politicians, that those who hustle, who take the risks, generate the income that pays the wages that the rest of us depend on. So we owe it to you as businesses to do our best to make the next set of risks the best and most beneficial for you as ever. That's why we want to help you with the business networks, with chambers of commerce, of backing up with good studies, good academia, and all of that, and to really enhance those relationships and to build on those connections. So in advance, thank you very much. Let's work on those connections today. We have full details of the forum on the official programme, which is on the forum webpage, which is on Ireland.ie. And we have a number of exciting panel discussions ahead and some VIP speakers, as Jude mentioned, and keynote addresses from our Taoiseach and Minister for Foreign Affairs, Micheál Martin, Minister Cleary, Minister Hackett, and as well as Minister Simmons from Barbados and Minister Green of Antigua. And at the end of the day, we'd like to invite you up to the historical part of Dublin Castle. This isn't the historical part, you may have noticed. For some Irish hospitality with traditional music at a reception in the Portrait Gallery, just across the courtyard up there. And that'll be, I think, the final opportunity to work on those relationships and connections. So before we start our discussion, if you don't mind, I'd like to take just a couple of minutes for a few words from our Taoiseach, our Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar, who's going to join us by video now.
Buenos dias. Bom dia. I'm very pleased to welcome you to the inaugural Ireland, Latin America and Caribbean Business and Economic Forum. The links between our countries are built on solid foundations, spanning centuries of connections. I know that Irish names such as Brown, O'Higgins, Lynch and O'Leary are part of the foundation stories of many of your countries, and that's something we're very proud of. We want to build on those strong foundations to deepen and broaden our connections and bring our countries even closer together. To achieve this, last year the government published our first ever strategy for Latin America and the Caribbean. We've already strengthened Ireland's diplomatic footprint with new embassies in Chile and Colombia, an office in Central America, and most recently, an office for the Caribbean. And we want to go further. Today's forum will provide you with the opportunity to exchange perspectives on the huge potential for even greater trade and investment between Ireland and the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. Crucially, it's also a chance to build our people-to-people connections, to tap into new networks, to explore fresh opportunities, and foster our dynamic relationship, which I experienced firsthand when I visited Colombia and Chile last year. I've also made official visits to Mexico and Peru as a minister, and I'm really keen to visit the region again as Taoiseach. Of course, as a committed EU member state, Ireland is not just a vibrant market with a highly educated workforce, but also a gateway into the market of 450 million people, the European single market. Your discussions today will be of immense value to businesses on both sides of the Atlantic and is another important step towards a deeper and mutually beneficial relationship between our countries. Thank you very much. Gracias. Obrigado.
Thank you, Taoiseach. Taoiseach mentioned lots of Irish names. I'm very conscious that we are about to have the Honourable Kerry Simmons, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade from Barbados. Barbados is one of those places that has a lot of Irish names as well. Indeed, the Minister's first name, Kerry, is very definitely an Irish name. But surnames such as, McCarthy, Dixon, Downey, O'Brien, and Fenty. You might have heard of a Barbadian or Bayesian lady called Fenty, Rihanna, who's quite famous, but has Irish origin as well. I think they think her name came from Fenton. But anyway, we're very glad you have her, and we're very glad that you share her with us. But I think it's an example of those connections that we have, but also connections that we need to build upon and enhance. And really looking forward to your remarks, Minister Simmons. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a great day. And to get us going, Minister Simmons from Barbados. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Let me try that again. Let's try this in the Barbadian way, a warm Barbadian sunshine way. Good morning, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be able to be here in Ireland. I want to begin Rory, by thanking the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ireland for the excellent arrangements which they made, certainly for my delegation, and the hospitality that has been extended. I also want to thank Enterprise Ireland for the efforts that were put in yesterday. And even though I was not able to attend, I've gotten some excellent feedback about the opportunities which exist for business development across border. And I think it is a very useful initiative, and I want to begin by signaling my heartfelt appreciation for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I would want to pick up where Rory left off, because Barbados is largely privileged and I think thrilled to be party to this effort. It is an effort, it is an initiative which really aligns with the national development policy of Barbados. I want to make bold to suggest that it aligns with the developmental policy of the Caribbean community, that community of micro-states which we call CARICOM. There are 14 of us. And certainly it aligns with that which took place in Argentina in January of this year, when the 33 states of Latin America and the Caribbean came together in an important CELAC meeting. That is what that grouping is called. And the output of that meeting was really all about trying to generate growth and build relationships across borders in a way that perhaps we had not been paying close enough and sufficiently careful attention to in the past. I should say to you that it would be remiss of me while I'm here and in the presence of Mr. Ed Malloy not to recognize that Barbados has been, perhaps too timidly, but has been trying to do exactly what is being done now, which is to try to build the relationship with Ireland. And we have so much in common with Ireland. Ed, if you stand so everyone could recognize you, please. I hate to put you on the spot, but he has been, Ed has been our honorary consul here, our consul general, for in excess of 30 years, and has given a lifetime of service to this effort of building the bridge between Barbados and Ireland. And as I say that, I am mindful that his wife Doriel has been equally by his side as he has been doing that task. I don't just say these things because I'm standing here, but it is a determined effort that my country is making to build this bridge. Seated not too far away from Ed is our ambassador designate to Ireland, a former governor of the Central Bank of Barbados, Mr. Cleviston Haynes, and Clevy, if you'd be also good enough to stand. And Mr. Haynes, ladies and gentlemen, will be the first resident ambassador from any English-speaking CARICOM country, to the best of my knowledge, in Ireland. And that is a testimony to Barbados's determination to advance the work of building the relationship between us. 375 years ago, roughly 50,000 Irishmen and women would have been taken from this place against their will to the Caribbean, in many cases to Barbados. That history has been airbrushed, as the British are wont to do, on both sides of the pond. But the fact of the matter is that there is a deep-rooted relationship between Barbados and Ireland. and in this particular regard, that the purposes for which those people were moved were not necessarily the best. This gives us an opportunity to build a relationship afresh for the ideal purposes. Business-to-business contact, business-to-customer relationships, and business-to-customer contact is really what trade is about. Governments don't trade, but people do. And the fact of the matter is that as I said before, it aligns extremely well with the ambitions that we have in the English-speaking Caribbean, because we are very clear that we have to diversify our economies. We have, and Barbados is an example of that, we've all done pretty well with tourism. In Barbados's case, permit me to say, we may have done remarkably well. 40% of our economy, our gross domestic product, taken directly or indirectly, is as a result of tourism. I have been a former tourism minister myself, and I must tell you, it is not the hardest sell. I woke up this morning at about 5 or so, and I was freezing cold. And I looked at the app on my phone, and it told me it was 5 degrees outside. I arrived here yesterday in what would be a comparably warm 8-degree weather, and my app on my phone tells me that this time next week is going to be 1 degree in Ireland. It is not the most difficult proposition to try to convince somebody that 30 degrees next to the seaside in Barbados with some rum punch in your hand, and if you throw in a bikini or two, that this is, you know, this is not something that you may prefer to be experiencing. But COVID taught us all in the Caribbean. It taught us all that we were perhaps becoming a little bit too complacent about our reliance on tourism, and that we had to seriously think about how we are going to diversify our economic base and how we are going to broaden the productivity, not only of Barbados, not only of St. Kitts, not only of Jamaica, but the entirety of the region. And that lesson was learned because of the fact that those small island states, microstates as I describe them, without exception, experienced double-digit decline when there was an international cessation of travel. Without exception, all of us experienced double-digit decline. In fact, we are among the 20 worst impacted states in the world as a result of COVID. And so therefore, it has forced us to go back to the drawing boards and to take a long, hard look at ourselves and to try to reposition our economies. I don't want to say that that which I am going to suggest to you now is as a direct result only of the COVID experience, but today it is said that 2 of the fastest growing economies in the world are to be found in the English-speaking Caribbean. First of all is Guyana, and clearly that is very closely related to their massive discovery of oil and gas reserves. And then in the case of Barbados, we are now growing at just under 5%. And that is a substantial and significant recovery from where we would have been, let us say, 10 years or so ago. But in terms of us all, we're looking at reforms. And there are reforms which, quite frankly, Rory, fit into the relationship that we're going to try to build with Ireland. So that there are some fundamentals, for example, the building out of a digitalized and digital economy, the delivery of our government's services across all of the countries digitally. And that really is a rollout that is taking place in every one of the countries of the English-speaking Caribbean. It is equally true to say that in the cases of Mexico, in the cases of several others in Latin America, there is also a need to digitize those economies. And when we spoke at CELAC in Argentina, one of the things we looked at was making sure that we could do waitlist trade, e-commerce between ourselves. Because again, as a community of states in Latin America, the Caribbean, we were characterized by the powers that colonized all of us as separate individual little entities. And we find it hard even today to be able to reach each other by sea because we just don't have that infrastructure as yet. So waitlist trade becomes a very important thing. But it is equally an area where Ireland has demonstrated success. It is an area where Ireland has started to lead the world in terms of digital economy and things that go with it, telecommunications, et cetera, et cetera. So that is an area where we are going, and it is an area where we believe we can find tremendous partnership. But to get to that stage of partnership, we've got to also develop the skills in our domestic spaces. That is a challenge certainly for the government of Barbados, and we are placing tremendous emphasis on the skills development related to the digitization of our economy. And again, we believe that we can look to Ireland in partnership there because that is a route that you have traveled well. In fact, even as I say that, I remember that after many, many years of difficulty with a company called Cable and Wireless, which was very English, along came an Irish company in the form of Digicel to lend us tremendous assistance to the recalibration of our sector. And that is still a company that is not only doing a lot of business in Barbados, but across the Caribbean and Latin America as well. International financial services is another area where we believe that we're going to be able to build significant partnerships. And indeed, one of the reasons why we have determined that we will use Ireland as a location for having a resident ambassador is because of the fact that alongside of perhaps Malta and Cyprus, Ireland really is the only other English-speaking member of the European Union. And therefore, it is a natural bridge for us to the European Union, to the OECD, to the economic regulatory powers of the North Atlantic, with which we want to be a close partner, and with whom we want to be a very responsive partner. And I say, just for the benefit of noting it, that as recently as last week, Tuesday, our Prime Minister and Minister of Finance went to our Parliament in order to align and realign our domestic tax policy with the internationally projected and accepted 15% standard. And we do that in order to make sure that we can continue to forge a way forward, which is completely in accordance with what is perceived now to be international best practices. Even as we do that, however, we maintain that there has to be a role played by multilateral institutions, such as the United Nations, on this difficult matter of international tax. And we would have voted in favor of that process a couple of days ago at the United Nations. So that while we want to be principal players, and we have really had to shift our goalposts domestically repeatedly as a result of the changes coming out of the OECD and the economic regulatory powers and what they require of us, the grey listing and the negative listing, etc. But we also feel that there must be a multilateral approach to taxation and to tax policy. And we feel that in doing so, in taking that road, we have to find relationships with countries who are similarly inclined and who have a similar multilateral perspective on development. I would say as well that part of where we are going, ladies and gentlemen, in the region is to recognize the importance of the use of our geographical location for logistics. In the case of Barbados specifically, Barbados sees itself as a logistical hub and a gateway to the world. We do not believe that being, and again, let me just be informed by history. 350 years ago, there was cargo, human cargo, coming from Africa, and the first stop would have been Barbados. The second stop would have been St. Lucia. The third stop would have been St. Vincent, and you continue to go up the island chain. But that was for the wrong purposes. We also believe that now it is quite possible to build relationships and have that logistical, because the geography hasn't changed. It is just the way in which we use the geography. And what we must now do is to be a logistical hub and a logistical gateway for the rest of the world. Just looking at Barbados, every day during this time of the year, we will have 6 or 7 flights leaving our island in order to come to the United Kingdom. Every day during this season, we're going to have 8 or so flights leaving our island going to the United States. Every day, we're going to have 2 or 3 going to Canada. The planes should not only be moving for the purposes of tourism. As I said, we've done that business and done it very well. But we also want to fill the belly of the aircraft with cargo. And so that we have repositioned our relationships now, and to say to Guyana next door, And we've already started to have the conversations with Brazil and Roraima in the north of Brazil. And just so that you understand the geography, Roraima is an hour's flight away from Bridgetown, Barbados, but 4 hours flight away from Sao Paulo. It is easier to get from the north of Brazil to Barbados than it is to get to Sao Paulo in Brazil. But the fact of the matter is that Roraima is where there is the agricultural production. So we are in the process of building out a food terminal in Barbados so that we can, for the first time, do the value added, taking the agricultural produce out of Guyana, the agricultural produce out of Roraima, the agricultural produce out of Suriname, all of those places in the south which are producing, and then we do the value added and the packaging, etc., in Barbados, and then we put them into the belly of the aircraft, and you get fresh Caribbean fruit in the European Union almost within the blink of an eye, on a daily basis, flights arriving. It is something that we perhaps could and should have done a long time ago, but as I said, we became victims of our own success with tourism, and we're becoming a wee bit too complacent. Partnership with an Ireland means a lot in that regard. And I want to say to you that we welcome and we relish the opportunities in terms of the diversification of the economic space. Again, it would be remiss of me not to point to the real revenue earner in the southern part of the Caribbean now, which is the oil and gas sector. And even though we, as a global community, we must move in the direction of energy, renewable energy, and reconsidering the way in which we are producing greenhouse gases and the emissions, etc., we cannot escape the fact that Guyana is projected to grow at 115% during the course of the next 5 years. And that related to that is a whole new range of industrial opportunity which will come out of the southern part of the Caribbean. Right next to Guyana, obviously, there is a Barbados, and we confidently expect that our relationship will continue to be such that Barbados will, as I said, become the logistical support instrument for Guyana as it emerges, because 5-10 years ago, Guyana was seen as a highly indebted poor country. But the fact of the matter is, ladies and gentlemen, that the renewable energy effort is part of what this is going to be about. In Ireland, I believe it is true to say that you are projecting to have, at a rate of 7% per year by the year 2030, a reduction in your greenhouse gas emissions. In Barbados, our ambitions are very similar to yours, but they exceed yours. We intend to be entirely fossil fuel free by the year 2030 as an economy. They are both very, very ambitious targets. But our region is open to investment, and that is the message I want to send to you. The Foreign Minister of St. Kitts is at the table, and he has been a 4-term Prime Minister in St. Kitts. And he will tell you as well that St. Kitts is also doing remarkable things in the energy sector. It is there that their geothermal energy efforts are reaping success, and very shortly, St. Kitts will be an exporter of geothermal energy, I believe, to neighboring islands like Puerto Rico, etc. These are things that were unprecedented and unheard of, not even thought about 5 or 10 years ago. But we are now on the cusp of the delivery of these things. It means, therefore, that as a region, we are open to investment opportunities in a plurality of sectors, and the energy sector is one such opportunity. In Barbados's case, we have the most dense implementation of solar photovoltaics to be found anywhere in the hemisphere outside of the United States itself. But our ambitions are to take the technology to wind, to take the technology to hydrogen and to biomass, so that we are able to have a lot of resilience across the plurality of technologies which will be servicing the island. Again, we're open to investment in that regard. We feel also very strongly that there was a lesson to be learned in the region from the COVID experience with respect to our own ability to protect our people. While others produced vaccines, we were told to wait indefinitely. while others produced vaccines and treated to their domestic space as a first priority. In some cases, it was the only priority, and we were told, hold on and wait indefinitely. And we have said to others in the southern part of the world that this should never happen to us again. And so therefore, we've built a relationship now with the support of the European Investment Bank and with Rwanda, which is doing its own manufacturing process, to work with Guyana and Barbados so that for the first time we will be entering the space of pharmaceutical production. All of the regulatory work is now virtually completed, and we want to carve out a space not only for production purposes of pharmaceuticals at a significantly commercial level, but also for research, because there's much room for study to be done in areas which impact the Caribbean and impact Latin America. In both Latin America and the Caribbean, there are certain specifics of an ethnic and racial nature which create patterns that we have identified in terms of cancers, in terms of different pathologies which are affecting the people of the South, but which are not necessarily prioritized by the industrial powers of the North. And again, there's an abundance of room for that type of partnership in terms of investment. So you're speaking, Ireland, to a region that is not any longer inclined to come to the North Atlantic and simply say, what can you do to help us? You're speaking to a region that is prepared to come to the North Atlantic and sit at the table and try to approximate in terms of opportunities for investment across borders, investment both ways, opportunities for development in terms of scientific advancement and knowledge advancement, and opportunities for the human-to-human contact to take on a fresh dimension and a broad new image. I think that that is really what the world is requiring of us today. And I think that that is what the people of the North Atlantic, quite frankly, and the people of the South want to see today. And therefore, it is a useful thing to hear a voice in Europe and a government like yours in Europe speaking the language of development opportunity, speaking the language of opening its doors to market access for our businesses, speaking the language of a flow of investment both ways, speaking the language really of building a future for our peoples on both sides of the Atlantic in a way that was never conceived of before and hardly ever related to. And for our part, we are more than happy and more than willing to come to the table as equal partners and to shape a destiny which mankind can feel comfortable with. On that note, I will close by saying that I've remained silent on the issue of climate change. None of that which we speak about today will take place if we do not continue to keep our planet at the forefront of our thoughts and considerations. And again, in Ireland, we have found a very useful potential partner on this question of making the necessary steps and taking the necessary positions to protect the common heritage of mankind. And so therefore, ladies and gentlemen, as I said, this initiative aligns remarkably well with what we in Barbados see as the way forward, and certainly is part of the course of policy development that we want to have for ourselves. And I want to urge you to believe that this can only be improved upon if we do one thing, and that is simply make sure that we can institutionalize this new initiative so that if not every year, then at least every other year, whether it be in the Latin American part of the world, the Caribbean part of the world, or right here in Ireland, we are able to bring our business people and our policy leaders together to make sure that this does not fall off track and that it can stand out like a beacon in the night as a way forward for all countries. I want to thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Minister Simmons. That was a really, I think, very interesting presentation. And I think it draws on some of the points that certainly appealed to me when I moved to Ireland, how it's part of the European Union, but a bridge to the Americas. And this position of being a small, open economy, which has done very well, which is growing very fast. I think there's a lot of synergies and a lot of lessons for other countries to share. And it sounds like, you know, Barbados and other countries in the Caribbean are also enjoying fast growth, similar opportunities. There's a lot of alignment I can see, and I think it's very interesting that traditionally, I suppose, the most outward-facing towards Latin America country in the European would be Spain or Portugal, the two countries. But Ireland is in a very unique position, and so that's why I think this is such an interesting initiative that's starting today. So to take that a little bit further forwards, now we're going to start with our first panel of the day. And I'm pleased to introduce our panelists. The title of this one is The Future of Our Economic Relations. And it's going to look at key trends and opportunities for trade, investment in Ireland and in the Latin America and the Caribbean. So, if I can introduce our speakers, the chair of our panel is May van Heinitz. She's Ireland's ambassador to Mexico, but also, and I'll have to read this because it's a very, very long list, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Cuba, and Belize. So a very long list, a very broad understanding there of the region. So Maeve is going to chair the panel. We also have Ken Bowles, who is the finance director, the CFO of Smurfit Kappa, the packaging company, which has a very big footprint in Latin America. We have Ignacio Fernandez Ruiz, who is the Director General of ProChile, the investment promotion agency in Chile. Felipe Campos, who is the Chief Operating Officer of Avalon, the aircraft leasing company. Juliana Villega, who is the Vice President for Exports of ProColombia, which is the Colombian investment promotion agency. And finally, Siobhan O'Dwyer, who's the global head of marketing and public affairs at Irish building materials building company Kingspan. So welcome to everyone, and thank you very much. Have a great panel.
So many thanks, Jude, and good morning, everybody. It's great to see the room so full. As Jude mentioned, my name is Maeve van Heinitz. I'm the Irish ambassador to Mexico, Cuba, and the countries of Central America. And within the Department of Foreign Affairs, I also act as our regional coordinator for Latin America and the Caribbean. And it's a great honour for me to chair this and moderate this opening panel of this morning's conference. I want to thank, in particular, Minister Simmons for providing such an ambitious programme for the development of relations between Ireland and Barbados to start us off this morning. And it's really appropriate to be ambitious because the relationship between Ireland and Latin America in the economic sense is currently really productive. Our trade statistics have been trending very significantly upwards. In 2002, our merchandise trade, two-way merchandise trade between Ireland and Latin America reached €5 billion, which was a 40% increase in just 2018. So taking the pandemic out of it, still a 40% increase. In 2021, services trade in both directions had reached 5.6 billion, so bringing us to total trade of going up towards 11 billion euros a year. And there's still huge more potential to explore. At the same time, an increasing number of Irish companies across a whole range of sectors are choosing to invest and locate in Latin America, while Latin American and Caribbean companies and their institutions are looking to set up in Ireland. So for the next hour, we're going to explore some of the trends and opportunities in that relationship as it's going to develop in the next years. And I'm really pleased, as Judah said, to be joined by 5 people who are exceptionally well positioned to shed some insight on where that relationship is going. Just to mention at the beginning that I'll ask some questions first, but we then want to really have an open discussion with the audience. We want to hear your questions. You will see on your tables a QR code for the Slido question system. So if you scan that code in, or scan the QR code, then put in the the numerical code you have, you'll be able to put your questions up, and we'll take lots of them in the second half of the panel. But I have sitting here beside me, first of all, Ken Bowles, who is the Group Chief Financial Officer for Smurfit Kappa, one of Ireland's first investors in the Latin American region. Ken, I've heard you describe yourself before as a Smurfit Kappa lifer. You joined in 1994 and have had a number of different roles before taking on the position of Chief Financial Officer. I know you've worked all around the world with Smurfit Kappa, including in Latin America. So you're a great person maybe to ask at the beginning. We hear a lot right now about the trends of nearshoring and regionalisation. How do you think they're going to impact Latin America? And I suppose in that context, and in view also of the recent Smurfit Kappa deal with WestRock, where do you see Smurfit Kappa in Latin America in 10 years' time?
Sure. Morning, Maeve, and morning, everybody. I suppose for context, you know, our Latin American journey started in 1986 with 3 countries. We now operate in 13 countries with 16,000 people, and ever wishing to expand, as we have done recently into Peru. It's a region that's always been high growth, lots of excitement, the odd issue here and there, but that doesn't stop the journey. I think to your question, though, we've already seen nearshoring happening, right? I think when Tesla opens a plant in Monterrey, I think you know that nearshore is here. I think when you look at what's happened over the last couple of years, particularly around the FDI, you know, about 17 to 20% is coming from Europe back into, particularly Mexico, I think, and North America equally coming back in. And then you have to ask why, and I think why is part of your, back to your stats about the pandemic, which is, you know, people got, okay, low wages, low costs in China worked well when supply chains operated well. When supply chains don't operate well, then you got to figure a different solution. And actually, places like Mexico, particularly along that Maquiladora border, offer real opportunity for high growth, high experience, engaged employees, talented workforce to do that job and shorten the supply chain. Because I think what we've learned over the last number of years is supply chains will never be as long as they used to be because they can't afford to be. But nearshoring, particularly, I think you're seeing it come through Mexico, but there's no reason why that can't expand throughout the region. Will continue to be. But I think it's real and it's here, and we see it even in our own customer base. You know, we're picking up customers that would have been, you know, producing in China and exporting are now part of our kind of northern Mexico, particularly operations. So that's going to continue. In the context of WestRock, you know, quite simply, Smurfit WestRock will, and it's, to be honest with you, part of the proposition of the combination was the fact that alongside the North American business, which is quite large, we get 2 beautiful businesses in Brazil and Mexico. So this time next year, we will have doubled our size in both those countries. And again, they are countries that offer a ton of opportunity, ton of growth, with again, young, talented, educated workforces.
No, thanks, Ken, and it is fascinating. It's been fascinating for me sitting in Mexico City to see the expansion of Smurfit Kappa in the north of Mexico, and to see, even as you mentioned, Tesla, companies like Mergon from Castle Pollard in the car industry also coming into the country. But Ken, I know you also have responsibility within Smurfit for sustainability. What role do you see this playing in your operations in Latin America? And I guess I think it would be interesting for us to hear from you from both an environmental perspective, but also from a social perspective.
I suppose the reality is that we've been sustainable since 1934. Like our business model is to take post-consumer waste and make fresh product from it. I think when culturally there's a lot of conversation today about cultural relations and cultural connections. That the reality is that there's a deep connection to the land in Ireland, and there's a deep connection to the land all through Latin America. I don't think culturally we think differently about how we treat the environment. I think that's quite, Europe and Latin America quite similar in terms of their intent and views on how we should go about decarbonisation and fixing that problem. Clearly North America, Asia taking a different view on that, slightly behind, I'd argue, where we are. But our view is that, you know, we operate a circular economy business that should leave little or no impact on the environment. And that's what our product does. The reality is that our product will return to nature in the way it came. You know, we plant more trees than we take up. We recycle everything. We invest heavily to decarbonise the operations we're in. And sometimes people take a view that, you know, you might treat Latin America differently because of regulation and standard. And we don't do that. So we push the group to the highest standard possible. And I suppose the simplest example of that maybe is that in Cali, we will start up a multi-fuel boiler, a biomass boiler next year at an investment of about 100 million, but that will reduce carbon in that country alone by 250,000 tonnes. It's 6% of our total emissions. So our intent is quite clear, which is that we take a responsibility around the environment very seriously, but it's a group-wide approach. So it's not about predominantly Europe, because that's where regulation is. It's actually, there's a view around, the reality is that ecology, the land, double materiality, how you treat the environment fundamentally is important to our business model, because that's important. And that feeds into the social aspect. So we've equally, throughout our time in Latin America, we've operated through foundations, particularly I think our two biggest ones in Colombia and in Mexico. For example, our Colombian foundation, and particularly our school, El Caracole, probably has about 9,000 beneficiaries annually in terms of what it does. And I think we don't see our role as an organisation any different from the product and the people. I don't see how you can disconnect them in countries like in Latin America, where there is a real need to kind of connect the community back to what you do, because they're fundamentally intertwined. And that's why we see intergenerational families in our organisation. The grandfathers have been through, then sons of daughters and sons and daughters. And that's very powerful as an organisation. I'm kind of struck by Minister Simmons' comments around COVID and how we treat people. We took that very seriously, because clearly our product was essential. So for our product to be essential meant we had to run. So that meant we had to help the community run, in the sense that we went back into the community in terms of care package, in terms of support and help. In Mexico, we set up our own kind of mini hospitals. We sent oxygen to people's homes so that the community was protected, not just our employees, because clearly there's an intertwining there. So we don't divorce our kind of social responsibility from our economic responsibility in that sense. We have a very simple maxim, which is, when we get to the end of our careers in Smurfit Kappa, you need to be able to look back at the factory gates and say, I've done some good. And that's not about the top line or the bottom line. That's a total view of how you've impacted the community, the environment, and indeed the health and safety of your workers.
No, thanks, Ken, and thanks for sharing that. And it's good also to hear both from the social side, but also the environmental side, some of those messages which chime very much, as you say, with what we heard from Minister Simmons a little earlier. Ignacio Fernandez-Ruiz, I will go to you. You're the Director General of ProChile, the Chile Investment Agency, and we're really grateful for you for travelling all the way to Dublin for our conference this morning. Maybe I can start by asking you to tell us a little bit about what the objectives of ProChile are.
Yes, and thank you so much for inviting me. It's such an honor being here in this event, which is very important for the relationship between Ireland and Latin America. Yes, ProChile is a governmental institution in charge of promoting goods and services abroad. In doing so, essentially what we do is trying to match the national offer with international demand. We have an office in every region of Chile. Chile has 16 regions, so we have an office in every region in Chile. And those offices, what we do is scouting the best of our offer. And we also have 54 offices around the world. We have here, we have Nicolas Poblete. He's somewhere about here, there. He's the person in charge of Dublin. And we also have 54 offices around the world, and those offices tell us which is the international demand. So what we try to do is put together those two aspects. And regarding nearshoring, Chile is quite far away from the world, if you want. So to get into the nearshoring, what we do is we have an international framework. Probably Chile is the country which has more free trade agreements with the world. We have more than 30 free trade agreements with 65 economies around the world. We reach 5 billion people with preferential treatment from Chile, and maybe 88% of the GDP in the world. So with this network of free trade agreements, Chile is a good platform for countries to come to Chile, and from Chile to do business in Latin America, in Asia Pacific. We are part of APEC, we are part of CPTPP. That is the largest trade agreement in the Asia Pacific region. So what we do is try to utilize our framework, international framework, in order to put our services and our products abroad.
Great, thanks, Ignacio. So with that number of trade agreements and with the work that your colleagues throughout ProChile are doing, what have you decided are the main opportunities for trade and investment between Ireland and Chile?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the numbers, just as the number, then we have to go to the details and double-click in some of the areas. If you look at the numbers and you see what Chile exports to the world and what Ireland import from the world, you have interesting cases. I mean, let me take wine, the wine industry as an example. And before that, actually, we have a wine testing outside. I mean, we brought 5 vineyards from the south of Chile, the Itata Valley. They are led by women, so we're very proud of that. And please try that after this conference. It's going to be very good wine from the south of Chile. It's a unique wine because it's just a little advice. This wine, it comes from back in the history. This is the grape that the Spaniard conquerors brought to Chile during the conquest back in the 16th century. So please go there and taste that wines. But this is the end of the advice thing. But going to the wine industry, Ireland import a lot of wine from the world. Chile export a lot of wine from to the world, like more than $2,000 million. And we are the best provider of wine, not the best, yeah, I think the best, but also the largest provider of wine in the island, you know? So that sector is a good match. We export a lot, you import a lot, we're matching. But there are many sectors that, even though we export a lot of those products and you import a lot of those products, we're not doing the match. For example, in seafood, salmon, we export more than maybe $6,000 million annually of salmon to the world, to Europe, but you're not importing salmon from Chile. You know, for some reason, you have to do those matches. In services area, I was talking to, I don't know, in the morning we were talking about the services. You're importing a lot of services from the world. We are exporting a lot of service, animation, financial services, IT, to the world, to Latin America, to Europe, but you're not importing from Chile. You're importing maybe $3 million or $5 million. So there are a lot to do there. In forestry, for example, you're an expert in forestry. We are exporting a lot of forest product, let's say, of course, wood, but also small pieces of wood to do constructions, also industrial pellets. You're importing industrial pellets from Russia, from America, but not from Chile. So we have to do those matching, and probably these kind of events are very important to find those ways.
Great, thanks, Ignacio. And the key information for everybody is that the first break is going to be at about 10 to 11. So that's when you can plan to start the wine tasting.
Thank you.
I'm going to pass now to Philippe Campos, who is the Chief Operating Officer of the aircraft leasing giant Avolon. Philippe, I love your biography because you're a naval engineer by training. You told me you then got bitten by a travel bug and decided to go into aviation. You first looked after all the Latin American operations for Avolon in your hometown of Sao Paulo. But 2 years ago, you packed up and brought your wife and kids here to Dublin to take on the role as Chief Technical Officer before last year becoming Chief Operating Officer. Philippe, Avolon, I mean, it's incredible given the size of the company now, but it was founded in just 2010, and Latin America was at the center of its business model from the beginning. Can you maybe start by telling us a little bit about that history and about the focus of Latin America in the business?
Yeah, thank you. So it's great to be here. Thank you for the invitation. So I joined Avolon in 2016. Avolon was founded in 2010. So we basically lease aircraft to all the airlines that we can in the world. So we have 13% of our aircraft in Latin America. Leasing, I'm not sure everyone understands what that is, but basically is the company that is in between the banks and the airlines when a bank doesn't want to give money to an airline because the risk of the airline is probably too high for them, then the leasing company step in and arbitrage that risk, basically. So leasing was created in Ireland. This is back on the 80s. The original company was called Guinness Beach Aviation. So that's why there's this strong connection of leasing with Ireland. And Latin America, for us in Avolon, was always key because one of the founders, the original founders of the company, Donald Slattery, his first dealings in GPA were in Latin America. So he was in Brazil in the beginning. So I think that created a bond between him and Brazil, and then fast forward that to when he created his second leasing company, which was Avalon, after RBS, which then became SMBC today. We created a huge connection to Latin America, so I was then hired and expanded the relationships there. So even though Avalon only has like 15% of the fleet in Latin America today, in the early days it was 60 to 70%, and then Latin America was crucial for our development. So it's different, the trade is different here because we basically have aircraft with the airlines. We don't have huge offices there, but we have a lot of presence there. 46% of the aircraft that are flying in Latin America today are leased, not by us, of course, by all the lessors, but the market has increased drastically over the last years, and the main airlines in Latin America are pretty much leasing everything that they can lately after the COVID situation. So we are supplying aircraft to them, and hopefully you have flown in a couple of our aircraft lately. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Philippe. I also wanted to ask you about innovation in Avalon and how your operations in Latin America and your business and operation contribute to this. So I think you're well placed as a former Chief Technical Officer, maybe to tell us a little bit about the fascinating eVTOL project that you have in Brazil and what you think it means for both the future of Avalon and the future of aviation.
And the connections of Latin America, I'd say. So, look, there's this need to go to a sustainable future in aviation, even though the carbon that is produced by aviation is a really small percentage of the world consumption, so less than 3%. It's something that the aviation is always looking at, and we in Avalon, not being the operators, tried to understand where we could actually play a role in it. So over the years, we invested in different studies. So we're currently investing in sustainable aviation SAF fuel, and we're working with that with Irish companies, with other companies. But one thing that we decided a couple of years ago was to actually go to the electric aircraft. So a number of electric aircraft are being developed in the world, and we have invested heavily in one that is called Vertical. So these aircraft, this company produces what we call eVTOLs. eVTOLs are electrical, vertical, takeoff and landing aircraft. So if you remember the Jetsons in the past, I think those are more or less the aircraft that we used to see in that cartoon. So it's really interesting. So a pilot plus 4 passengers, fully electric, rotors that actually fly the aircraft vertically, and then they turn and they fly to wherever they need to go. So it doesn't, at this stage, it doesn't really replaces big size aircraft like the ones that you fly here, but it replaces their helicopters. So it's, for now, they are 100 times more silent. They are 100 times more safe due to the amount of rotors that you find. So, and the operational costs are going to be between 50 and 80% cheaper than the typical helicopter. So, and then this is all very exciting, and how do we do that? So we decided to actually commit to buy 500 aircraft, not produced yet. The aircraft are hopefully going to be flying in 2026. And Gol, and the Brazilian airline, was the first airline to actually partner with us, agreeing to invest on 150 plus 100. So we bought 500, and a couple of weeks after we bought 500, we had committed 250 with Go. So, and then we had American Airlines, Virgin, AirAsia, JAL in Japan. So a number of airlines committed. We actually oversold 500 aircraft in, I think, less than 6 months. We sold 550, so we now have options to buy more. This is not yet fully fledged and fully developed, but what we're doing now with Go and other airlines is not to actually get to the same place where we were with other aircraft, where we just lease the aircraft, get the money, and they do whatever they want. We are actually working with them to develop different type of relationships, partnerships, joint ventures, because the countries are not well developed for none of the countries, not only in Latin America, to actually take these aircraft So they need to be charged, they need airports, they need landing points, and this is something that we are developing not only with Go, but with other airlines in the world, but this is being really led by Go in Brazil. So I think this is a good example of partnership that we have with one of the Latin American countries, and this is hopefully going to be reality in the near term. So other suppliers are there. I know that Embraer, for instance, in Brazil, they have EV, and there are many others competitors in the space. So I'm not really sure that Vertical, the one that we're backing, is going to be the one that we're going to be seeing in the future, but I am sure that it's going to be part of what we're going to be seeing in the ecosystem of these aircraft in the future. And it looks futuristic, but I'm sure that before 2030, we will all have flown in one of these aircraft, which is very amazing to see. So,
no, thanks, Philippe. It definitely sounds amazing and very Jetson-like.
Yeah.
Just a reminder that while you're waiting for the Jetsons to become reality, that Slido, the electronic question answering system, does exist, so you can put any questions you want in there. Juliana, I'm going to move to you. You're the Vice President for Exports in ProColombia, where you've been for nearly 2 decades. You've served in both China and in Peru, as well as headquarters, so you've very much a global perspective on it. As you're well aware, Ireland and Colombia have long-standing economic links, and in fact, when we were preparing for this panel, I learned from Ken that the IFSC was used as a model for free trade zones in Colombia when they were being developed. As you know, in recent years with Colombia as well as with Chile, we've been intensifying our government-to-government relations, and Colombia has opened an embassy in Dublin. In 2019, we opened in both Santiago and in Bogota. So against this background of intensified relations, what is ProColombia hoping to achieve in Ireland?
Well, good morning, everybody. Buenos dias, bon dia. Thank you for having ProColombia here. Well, I think for ProColombia is, very, very good news to see how we have built this very strong, I think, extraordinary collaboration between the two countries in both sides of the Atlantic. And after these maybe 20 years of strong collaboration, we've seen in the last 4 years how everything has been accelerated by different actions and all these values we share. Experiences related to peace, for example. We have common things and common values that we have to take advantage of. We have been observing all these things happening, all these high-level visits that we've had, especially last year. We had, after 20 years, for the first time, our foreign relations minister visiting Ireland in 2022. We had also the Prime Minister of Ireland visiting Colombia in my wedding anniversary, St. Patrick's Day. That's a great date to go to Colombia last year. Also, our Vice President and Foreign Relations Minister, Ms. Ramirez, was also here. So opening our embassies, Colombia's in Ireland in 2018 and Irish embassy in Bogota in 2019, would be a great message for the public sector, of course, but also for the private sector. Our associations, companies, seeing that there's a path that they could, go through, and helping us strengthening this relationship is only positive. So we found common places which we should go together, messages from both governments that are, direct and clear, and a private sector that is coming with us, the Irish private sector, amazing companies such as Smurfit Kappa, of course, that have believed in Colombia, and Colombian companies also believing in this market. So ProColombia is there for these companies, these associations, and of course having this amazing link with the government of Ireland and of Colombia too.
No, thanks, Juliana. And as you said, Smurfit Kappa is, I think, the largest Irish investor in Colombia. But for other Irish companies who want to follow in their footsteps, what do you see as the main opportunities for them in Colombia? And are there opportunities in investment or in procurement?
Yes, of course. I think, first of all, we've seen a great behavior last year in non-mining exports. That's what ProColombia actively promotes as ProChile. So last year we grew around 70% our non-mining exports to Ireland. We still have a very big percentage of mining exports there. We have around $242 million of Colombian exports to Ireland, and a very, very small percentage is non-mining and added value exports. So we have to really work on that. That means also that we have great opportunities. Of course, Colombian coffee, the best of the world. Then we have also a great chance in chocolate. We are part of the 5% of the world producers of fine cocoa in the world. So I think we could be the best suppliers of cocoa, of chocolate, of course, for Ireland. We also have amazing opportunities in the fashion industry. We have great designers. And we also have opportunities in the decoration sectors. You have great hotels, great buildings, offices everywhere, and Colombia would like to be part of this amazing decoration you have in Ireland. When you talk about investment, I think Smurfit Kappa is a great example of nearshoring, friendshoring, powershoring. We've used so many words and terms for that, but the truth is that Colombia is an amazing exports platform. So sorry for taking this amazing example here, but after this investment, Colombia has been able to export last year more than $32 million only of your product from Smurfit Kappa to Ecuador, to El Salvador, Puerto Rico, Chile, the United States, Venezuela. So we are that bridge, when you talk about the relationship between Colombia and Ireland, we are, part of the Atlantic, amazing. But then when you talk about the Americas, we have amazing advantages. We don't have to pay tariffs in around 90% of the countries of the Americas. So that's an amazing exports platform, and that's a big opportunity. And now the government has a bet on energy transition. So we also have Irish companies investing in clean energies. That's a great opportunity we have to strengthen, and we have to talk about that much more than we're doing now. Sustainability has to be part of what we're doing, and that includes, of course, tourism. So we don't have a direct flight with Latin America and Ireland still, but we are growing more than 40% a year Irish visitors to Colombia. So last year we had more than 4,000 Irish going to Colombia, and we hope that growing rate is the common thing to happen year by year. So the opportunities are there in goods and services. We have also great chances of investors in technology. That's also happening. Colombia is a powerhouse when you talk about outsourcing services. So you're all very welcome to Colombia. It's a country of beauty, and I really invite you all to see it with your own eyes. And we really would like to complement this amazing economy with Colombian goods and services, and I'm sure that working together in places like this, events like this kind of conversations, everybody will be benefited from this strong relationship. So thank you very much, and I hope we can keep seeing these amazing figures and growing data for both countries.
No, great. Thanks, Juliana. It's really fascinating to hear the number of different sectors that are there. Though I have to say, between Chilean wine and Colombian chocolate, it's like somebody knew me when they were putting this panel together.
And coffee too.
And the coffee too.
And don't forget the flower sector.
Yeah.
And olive oil from Chile.
You're part of the flower exports, of course.
We can do a large list. I mean, yeah.
All bases covered.
All bases covered. Flowers, design, chocolate, Chile, or Chilean wine, and coffee, and clean energy. Siobhan, you are the Global Marketing and Public Affairs Manager for Kingspan, which is, of course, the Irish construction industry company, which was famously founded in the backyard of a pub in Kingscourt, County Cavan in 1965. Kingscourt is where I had my first ever job, so I feel a particular connection. But you've now grown to a company of more than 22,000 employees in 70 countries around the world. You yourself have been with Kingspan for more than 8 years, having previously worked with both Nualite and 360. But of the three companies on the panel, Kingspan is the latest entrant to the Latin American market. Can you tell us a little bit about the company's decision to enter the market and what strategies you've been trying to adopt to be successful there?
Absolutely. And first of all, just to say it's an absolute honour and a privilege to be here, so thank you for the invitation. I'm just going to give you 30 seconds on Kingspan, because that'll just give you a little bit of context on the construction industry, and then I'll explain what has been a very, very successful partnership, and it is more of a partnership than anything else in Latin America. So to give you a brief overview of Kingspan, as Maeve said, founded in 1965 by the father of the current CEO. So Eugene Murta founded. Gene Murta is the current CEO. He took over 15 years ago at the age of 35 and has grown the business phenomenally since then. We today, as Maeve said, 22,000 people, about 8 billion euro revenue this year, and we are organised around 5 different operating divisions. So the backbone of the business is insulation products of different types. So fundamentally, the business is all about energy efficiency in buildings. Sustainability is literally in the DNA of the business. In more recent years, we've expanded into other parts of the building envelope. So we have natural daylighting and ventilation products. We have sustainable water management, which we see as a huge opportunity, obviously, in Latin America. And we have integrated PV solutions, among many, many others. We also have a business that is very focused on the data centre sector. So the business has expanded quite a bit. And it's worth just mentioning, before I again explain the Latin America piece for us, it's worth explaining that the construction industry is very, very localised. So it's driven very much by local building regulations, local ways of building. So you'll know yourselves as you move around the world, buildings look different from country to country. They're built with different materials, built in different ways. And the skill set in countries will be quite different. So for us, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We don't have a model that we drop into different markets or geographies. It's just not the way we work at all. We're the opposite of that. So instead of acquiring businesses and squeezing them and driving them, we acquire businesses or invest in businesses and we back them. It's a very different type of model. So in Latin America, we started actually in Mexico. It's all been through either acquisition or joint venture in Latin America. We entered Brazil, which is the biggest market there for us, in 2017 through a joint venture with a company called Isoeste, an absolutely fabulous company. And since then, we've grown in I suppose, 2 key ways. So one is by adding capacity into Brazil. So we've built new greenfield sites. I was chatting about this over dinner last night. We have a fabulous new facility in Cambuí. And we also acquired into Colombia, Uruguay, I should say, and we're currently looking at Paraguay and Chile. So we're very actively hunting in those 2 countries at the moment. And the Brazilian business is now the largest business in terms of our core product, which is insulated panels. It's also the fastest growing business we have in the whole world in that product category. And, you know, that's kind of the mechanics of how we've done it. But I think the real story actually is, it's a cultural connection. It's a story of entrepreneurship. So we were lucky enough through our joint venture in Isa Weste to find a very like-minded business. Irish people are entrepreneurs by nature. You know, it's a small country. We've had to be very agile. We have to be very entrepreneurial. We're all over the world looking to grow our businesses. And we found that same spirit actually in Brazil, in the Isa Weste business. Highly entrepreneurial, very ambitious, very hungry business. And that's really been the secret to the success there. And what they have done is they have reached into the Kingspan universe, and they have looked all around, and they have used it like an a la carte menu, and they've chosen the solutions that they think will work well in the Latin American markets and have brought them in. And I would say their approach is a fail-fast approach. They just take in, you know, different products and solutions, try them, you know, they'll either work or they don't work, and then that's how they've grown the business. So it's been a real story of entrepreneurship. And I would say, just final point on that, we actually bring the CEO of that business, Marcello Maicayad, who was the original CEO of the Isa Weste business. He's now the director of the LATAM business, and we bring him in regularly actually to talk to our Kingspan people around the world on that exact topic, because it's been tough. It's not an easy place to do business. It's very volatile. There are ups and downs. There are huge political changes, as we all know. But through all of that, they have just kept growing and growing and growing and growing. And they've done it because of their mindset. And their motto there is, the lion is the symbol of the Kingspan brand. And their motto is, lions don't have refrigerators, i.e. we have to hunt for our meat. So that's the motto of the business. So that's how we've done it.
Thanks, Siobhan. That's quite a motto that you have there. You talked a little bit in the beginning about sustainability being in the DNA of Kingspan, and I know it's something that you've worked on for many years. How do you see that growing in your Latin American businesses into the future?
Yeah, well, I'm personally passionate about sustainability. That's why I'm with Kingspan. That's why I love, one of the many reasons why I love being in Kingspan so much. It is literally what we do every day of the week. Every day we get up and we make products for sustainable buildings. So I don't know how many people know this, but Philippe, you referred to aviation being only 3% of, or less than 3% of global carbon emissions, which a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of focus on air travel. Actually, the built environment is almost 40% of all energy-related carbon emissions. It's a huge, huge emitter of carbon. And not only is it an emitter of carbon, it's also a huge consumer of the Earth's resources. So about 30% of everything that comes out of the ground every year is used in buildings and construction. And between 30 and 60%, hard to know exactly, but they're the figures that get thrown around, of all waste that goes to landfill is coming from the construction industry. So it's an industry that has a huge, unfortunately, negative environmental impact at the moment. And if we get it right, it can have an enormous benefit. So for us, we see sustainability in Kingspan in two ways. We look at it in terms of the impact of our business operations, and then we look at it in terms of products that go into more sustainable buildings, and we're approaching it in those two ways. We have a Planet Passionate 10-year sustainability programme with a number of targets, two of which are particularly notable. One is to take 90% of absolute carbon out of our manufacturing operations by 2030. That's an absolute carbon emission reduction, only 10% offsets, because we think we can't get rid of the rest. And we are targeting a 50% reduction in carbon intensity in our supply chain. So those are two enormous targets that we're all kind of driving towards, including our businesses in Latin America. So in terms of the way we run our business, you know, we take that same approach in Latin America. We do it with all our businesses. I would say on the product side and the building side, it's a bit different. So what we see is, in terms of the construction industry, there are a small number of big drivers at the minute. So there's the drive for more energy efficient buildings, and we're kind of there in Europe actually for new builds. There's not that much more runway really left. So in Europe, the policy focus would be on reducing the carbon footprint of products in buildings and also dealing with the end-of-life waste issue. That's what's being focused on in Europe. With Latin America, the market is at an earlier stage in terms of its building regulations. So we're not seeing those kind of big sustainability drivers just yet in Latin America. It is coming. So what we see around the world basically is it moves in a wave, with Europe typically pioneering and leading the way in terms of sustainability in buildings, and then other markets are following through. So we would expect to see energy efficiency will probably be the first focus in Latin America, and then we'll move on to broader decarbonisation, but it's not really there quite yet. And it is worth mentioning that building, in the construction industry anyway, building regulations drives behaviour more than anything else, really. It's absolutely essential. People won't do it on their own in the building industry. That's really where it's at.
Oh, thanks, Siobhan. It's really very interesting how it's going to develop in both of our regions. Juliana, I might come back to you, but just a quick reminder to everybody, you can put any questions you want into the Slido system. But Juliana, as you know, Ireland is a proud member of the European Union. We're in fact this year celebrating 50 years of EU membership. For you as pro-Colombia, when you look at Ireland, is our European Union membership important? And maybe on the flip side of that, when you think about your home region, how do you see regional economic development going in Latin America?
Well, for us, it's really important. We have an agreement with the European Union. We've had it for 10 years. This November is our 10th anniversary. And it's one of the most important regions for our non-mining exports. When you take a look at the top 10 destinations of our non-mining exports, you have there countries like the Netherlands, Belgium, because there are hubs for coffee, flowers, and this kind of exports. But we see also Ireland as a very important gate to this part of the world, especially for small, medium enterprises, which is part of the main, tissue we have in Ireland and Colombia when you talk about production and when you talk about the economy. So having this region with trade preferences for us is very important, because that's how you get more competitive, is a very attractive market. Population here has, you pay for these stories when you add value to your products. This is a market that, is more educated and is willing to experience and know more when it comes to consumption and, when you talk about certification, sustainability. So for Colombia, getting here in a very strong way is very important. So this 10 years of the agreement we have, I think, is a very important foundation, but we can't stop there. We have to keep working in the opportunities we have. And Colombia in the region, I think, would be that bridge we were talking about before, in the Americas, of course, and also between Europe and the Americas, because we're growing, we're a stable country. Our GDP grew more than 7% last year. The forecast for this year would be also positive, not like Guyana, but we hope to grow at around 2%, our GDP this year. We have more than 50 million people in Colombia. Our consumption is also very attractive for any foreign direct investor. So I think the message there is also very clear and positive. We think about the long term. We know that Colombia is a powerhouse. We are one of the biggest economies of the region. When it comes to population, we're also one of the biggest countries in the Americas. So we have a very important part to play, Ireland and Colombia. And especially when we talk about SMEs, I think we're doing a great job. It's not enough. We have to keep working for the SMEs. Actually, we have a very important event in December this year. We're going to host the Ibero-American Forum for SMEs. That's this number 6th forum, and you're all very welcome to Medellin. We're going to be there the 11th and 12th of December, and you're going to have there more than 600 SMEs talking about these kind of topics. So I'm sure Ireland has a lot to talk about there.
Wow, thanks, Juliana. That's a great invitation.
Yeah.
Ken, I might come back to you for a minute. I was struck that Siobhan spoke about the experience of working with their manager in Brazil and what he's been able to bring into the company as a whole. For Smurfit Kappa, how does Latin America fit into the so-called global talent search that's going on at the moment? What's been your experience?
It's always featured. I mean, the reality is that the war for talent is real, but the war for talent has always been there. It's probably more acutely felt now. But we've always kind of had a cultural relationship that says that the best blend you get is when you put two cultures together, not when one takes over another. So if you go back, the previous CEO of our European operations was Colombian. The head office at the moment has some colleagues from our Mexican office in there, actually a married couple who came over together. Over time, we've kind of cycled people through the office, gone kind of 2-year stints to kind of get them a view of the operations here in Europe. And equally, we've sent colleagues over there to kind of learn and bring back. And so, but what you're seeing is that some of these relationships started 20 years ago. So the colleagues that I would have started with 30 years ago are now becoming senior parts of the organization. So they not only understand the Latin American environment which they grew up in fundamentally, but they also have a kind of a group view, which is important because you're also trying to shrink kind of 6,000 kilometers of control and command here, which is people in, whether it's Colombia, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, need to understand what the people in Dublin mean, even if we speak too fast and they can't understand the accent sometimes. They need to kind of get the message. And sometimes it's that kind of, if you've seen the rest of the world, and in Smurfit Kappa you do get a chance to see a lot of the world, you kind of bridge that gap down to something very, very small. And so it comes back to that concept of the small family of 48,000 people, which we sort of are. But no, we've always had that idea, and I think I was talking to Ignacio earlier, when Venezuela kind of had to leave our portfolio of families because of the actions of the government there, we managed to get about 1,500 of our people out of Venezuela. So we created a program to kind of get them to a safe place, and most of those people have kind of stayed within our business. So that talent pipeline you can see all through Latin America and through Europe. So it sort of goes back to the social context, but equally, the war for talent is there. You'd be silly to ignore it on a regional basis. And I think the one thing you will find, though, different than Europe, completely different than Europe, it's a very mobile population. The reality is that Latin America has a young mobile population that will travel for opportunity, where Europeans tend not to. I mean, if you're in northern France, you're unlikely to want to move to the next town for a job. It's just not in your DNA. Whereas it's in the DNA of Latin America to move and be mobile.
Well, I think that brings us nicely to a Latin American man who has moved and been mobile and also speaks English with a lovely Irish twang. Philippe, I have a number of questions from the audience, either specifically for you or I think you're the appropriate person to answer. The first is, there is somebody asking you what you see as the main difference between innovating in Brazil and in Ireland. And there was a question which has disappeared now but was there earlier, but maybe I'll put to you about what you see as the prospects for air links between Ireland and Latin America.
So the second one?
For an direct air flight.
Oh, yeah. I'll start with that because that's the most difficult one. So I am one of the clearly persons that are most interested in that because I go back to Sao Paulo all the time and I would love a direct flight. So yesterday this was the topic of the dinner. So I think what we're doing here has to be an incentive for a flight. The number of Brazilians that are around, you hear Portuguese in Dublin all the time. So I think, that has to come at a certain point, hopefully in the near term. I've been dealing with all the airlines in Latin America in general for the last 8 years, and I always pose that question. But look, it's an economic decision. They have other destinations that they feel are more profitable, and they keep flying there. So the situation now is that the world needs aircraft now after COVID. So we had an absence of approximately 3,000 aircraft that were not produced during the period of the COVID. So now we are going back up. I mean, there's a lot of demand, but there's not enough aircraft, and that's why the tickets are so expensive wherever you go, and that basically actually puts this on hold for a while. So when it comes to me, I'll keep trying, and I think we all should, because I genuinely believe that if there were a flight direct, this flight would make a fortune. So I think that's the best response that I can give for that. And the first one was
on innovation, differences in innovation between Ireland and Brazil.
Oh yeah, not only Brazil, I think, so between Ireland and I think other countries where I lived or where I dealt in Latin America. So I think it seems to me that it's easier here to actually get something over the line, or get something approved, or get an agreement to do something, or to innovate, or get support from the government. So when you go to the countries of Latin America in general, so when you want to innovate or you want participation or support, it just takes more time, and it's a little bit more cumbersome than I see happening here. So like talking about SAF projects, so you start a project and then you present, and then fast forward like 6 months, the minister is in the office talking about the program and how we should push the government towards execution of that. So I never saw that in Brazil or Chile or in Colombia or in Mexico, countries that I had more proximity and trying to develop these things with the airlines. So I think those are, I would say, the main differences. I'm not an expert in all the countries, but from working with the airlines over the years, I think speed, basically, and proximity are the things that actually come to mind. Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Philippe. I might come back to you, Ignacio, on the same topic of innovation. How do you see innovation in Chile, and what opportunities are there for Ireland and Irish companies to benefit from it?
Yeah, if I may, I would take something that he said before regarding the flights and stuff. I mean, in terms of international trade, I think logistic is maybe 90% of the stuff, you know. So not only with the flights, but also we have to do an effort in order to make all the logistic easier for our companies, you know, in terms of port, in terms of paperless trade. Now, because of Brexit, you have a very innovative system with the UK. Maybe we can apply some of those systems into Latin America. If we can make especially for our small and medium enterprises, easier the logistic in terms of all the paperwork, I mean, the trade, believe me, is gonna grow strongly. So we have to do that effort if we want to see in 10 more years a strong relationship between Ireland and Latin America. But going to innovation, I have a lot of things to say. I'm not sure that my English now let me say it properly, but yes, I mean, in Chile we have a lot of things happening in innovation. We are, as you probably know, we are an export-oriented country. We are a very small country in the end of the world, so we need international trade in order to survive as a country. You know, we need that revenues that the international trade give us, and we've developed some industries like mining, like forestry, like fishing, like that kind of industries that we are very, very strong internationally. The wine industry, and we have a lot of suppliers. Companies that provide services or goods to that industry that are doing a lot of innovation. Let's say in fishing farming, for example, all the stuff related to lighting for those farming is developed by Chilean companies, small companies. All the stuff related to veterinary and medical stuff for the fishing is made by Chilean companies. In terms of agriculture, I mean, all the logistic, I mean, we put cherries in China, fresh cherries in China in this season, like $2,000 million every year, and all the frozen logistic and all the packaging is made by Chilean companies. So there is a lot of innovation related to exports that I urge you guys to look at and to see what's going on in Chile in that area. We also have a scheme called Startup Chile. It's been working for the last 10 years. We've been working with more than 1,600 companies from 85 countries. And the idea of that scheme is to bring into Chile innovative entrepreneurs in order to develop their ideas in Chile and to introduce them the Chilean ecosystem. You can apply to those programs in the website, and Nicolas is going to give you all the details, and that's very important. And also, we are doing a program or a scheme called Go Global. We support Chilean companies to go outside and do some landscape in different countries, in Colombia, in Peru, in the United States, and also in Europe. I'm not sure Ireland is there, but I think Ireland should be there. What we do is put our companies, our entrepreneurs and innovative companies in contact with the ecosystem of those countries. We put them for 1 or 2 months there in order for them to know what's going on there, make contacts, do networking, and probably stay there and develop an idea there. So we're doing a lot of innovation, and I think we can do something together there.
Oh, thanks, Ignacio. And I know that both pro-Chile and pro-Colombia, as well as the other Latin American embassies here, have stands out in the area to your right when you go through the doors. So during the upcoming break, you've been able to chat to people there. We're going to be wrapping up the panel in a minute, so I'm just going to do two last questions quickly. To Siobhan first, you're 5-6 years now in Latin America. Where do you think Kingspan will be in 10 years' time in Latin America?
Oh, well, the plan right now is to double the business at a minimum in the next 5 years. So we don't set those kind of long-term plans. We tend to set shorter-term plans that we're all going to be around for. But yeah, very, very ambitious growth plans there. Could I make one comment on innovation?
Yes,
if I could.
Please.
One comment I wanted to make is, at a product level, in Kingspan, we probably run a bit of the innovation from the centre. So I won't comment on the product level. I think digitalisation is where it's at. So for us, what we have noticed is actually our business in Brazil is ahead of a lot of our other businesses around the world in terms of digitalisation. And for me, I think digitalisation is absolutely the future, particularly if I look at construction. And I think really all of us have to be focusing on making everybody, really proficient in digitalisation. And there's a great connection again between Ireland and these parts of the world. That's just an observation I wanted to make. Sorry, I think I got into your question.
Do you want to show us the shirt?
Oh yeah, this was
brought before.
I forgot to show you this. So this is something, we talked about the cultural connection and the kind of, I would say the kind of heart of the business, in Brazil and Ireland. And the construction industry is very, very traditional. And I just wanted to show you this because I'll tell a full story. I was actually sitting in my garden having a glass of wine one Friday evening with my husband. This is in September.
Wine, I hope.
Hopefully, maybe. Yeah. And I got a message in from the marketing director of our Kingspan Isoeste business in Brazil, and he said, "I've been chatting to him a week before. This is classic Brazilian business style that we find. I literally talked to him a week before and said, hey Siegfried, why don't we look at doing something in Brazil on the sports side to build the brand?" And on Friday evening, I get a WhatsApp message saying, hey Siobhan, what do you think about sponsoring the women's soccer team, the Corinthians team, for the finals, which were happening on Sunday? So of course, then I was right into my phone, reading all about it. It looked so exciting. So we sponsored them, and I can honestly say it's like one of the proudest moments I've ever had. And I just think it's such a tribute to the team there in Brazil, that in such a traditional industry, they would have sponsored the women's soccer team. It had a huge impact all across our business, actually. And we hope to continue that partnership. We're sponsoring a few more events with them at the moment, and we're talking about a long-term partnership. So I just wanted to mention that because it was just a really lovely connection and a great tribute to their business.
That's great. We have a Brazilian table close to the front, and I could see them recognise it the minute you held it up. Just to close us out, Ken, Smurfit Kappa is the longest Irish investor in Latin America, at least the longest I'm aware of. I want to give you the last word with two questions that you might answer for us very quickly. The first is coming from the floor, wondering about whether Smurfit has operations in the Caribbean or where they might look. And the second question for me, I just said you are the longest standing in Latin America. What's the key piece of advice you would give to Irish companies who want to follow in your footsteps?
We have some small operations in Central and Caribbean, but it's about following down the packaging markets there, and some of those are kind of concentrated around banana producers and their own products. But we rule no country out, put it that way. It took us a long time to get into Peru to find the right acquisition. Clearly, there's still lots of countries we're not in. So it's a bit like Siobhan, nowhere's off kind of limits in terms of where we go if there's a packaging market and we can serve it. In terms of the second question, it sort of, I'll devolve back into the classic CFO answer, which is it really comes down to kind of understanding risk and reward and capital allocation. I mean, it would be silly to assume that this is not a region that doesn't present risk at times, but the reward is around portfolio. So, we operate the region as a portfolio business. And at times, some regions will go through tricky times. We had that with Venezuela. We see it sometimes with Argentina. That happens. And then it's about how you build that balance sheet in that business and how you fund it and finance it. So we've always taken a view that these businesses are funded locally, resourced locally, and they're protected from what tends to happen around currency volatility. But they're very large domestic businesses that operate as the number one or number two in the markets they're in. So it's about, I think it's about investment, it's about understanding risk and reward, it's about capital allocation at the heart of it. But I think you need to kind of set your mind aside to what the world tells you about Latin America sometimes, and go and engage with it. I mean, when Kingspan were going into Brazil, Jeff actually came in to me to talk about Brazil. So like, it's for Irish companies who are thinking of making that leap, I'd say, I'm sure Siobhan won't mind me saying this, get in touch with companies that are there. I mean, the reality is we are the longest there. So theory is we probably have a bit of experience about how you do this. And equally, as do Kingspan, as does Felipe from his business. So there's nothing wrong with getting in touch and connecting. I think that's part of, break that kind of mystique, break the barrier about what this region is, and get into the kind of the benefits, the rewards that can be there, the talent pool as you talked about, and everything else that's fantastic about it.
No, thanks, Ken. And it's actually wonderful to hear you say that and mention the specific example of Kingspan and Smurfit. As an Irish ambassador abroad, one of the strongest things that we can draw on as a state is always our existing Irish businesses in any country who are, in my experience, always willing to put on a green jersey and help people who are coming in. And I might shout out, we have here with us the Irish Mexican Chamber, its President Blaine Doyle, who have a boot out there as well, and who have been fantastic about bringing and helping Irish companies come into that market. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Siobhan O'Dwyer from Kingspan, Juliana Villegas from ProColombia, Felipe Campos from Avalon, Ignacio Fernandez-Ruiz from ProChile, and Ken Bowles from Smurfit Kappa. You've been a fantastic panel. Thank you for taking the time to share all of your insights with us.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've really found the insights and the contribution from the panel to be as valuable and as interesting as I have. To continue the conversation, I'm now delighted to introduce by video to us a message from the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Argentina, Santiago Cafiero. And I want to particularly thank the Ambassador of Argentina and all her colleagues in the embassy for the great cooperation they have with the Department of Foreign Affairs here, both in helping us get this message and on an ongoing basis.
Agradezco al señor Ministro de Relaciones Exteriores de Irlanda, Michel Martin, y a su equipo por promover la realización de este primer foro económico y comercial entre Irlanda y América Latina y el Caribe. Este foro representa una oportunidad para potenciar las relaciones económicas y comerciales, aumentar el flujo de negocios, de inversiones y cooperar en el desarrollo de nuevas tecnologías. La Argentina fue uno de los primeros países en reconocer al Estado irlandés, producto de los fuertes lazos entre nuestros pueblos que se remontan al siglo XIX, cuando ilustres irlandeses, como el almirante Guillermo Brown, uno de nuestros próceres, eligieron a nuestra nación como su hogar. Actualmente, la diáspora irlandesa en la Argentina es una de las más numerosas. Quiero compartir con todos ustedes que estamos trabajando junto con una muy activa comunidad de empresarios argentinos en Irlanda en la articulación de una red que nuclea a emprendedores que lideran proyectos. Estos empresarios esperan poder integrar una Cámara de Comercio Latinoamericana en Irlanda. Existen diversos sectores en los que podríamos profundizar el relacionamiento entre América Latina y el Caribe e Irlanda. Un sector que merece especial atención en el contexto del desafío común de la transición energética es el que se desarrollará en torno al hidrógeno. La Argentina publicó este año su estrategia nacional. Ya cuenta con empresas y consorcios produciendo hidrógeno y tiene uno de los mayores potenciales del mundo para su desarrollo, por la doble condición que implican las condiciones naturales y las capacidades científico y tecnológicas. Otro sector a destacar en el vínculo es el de servicios. En particular, en el año 2021 nuestro país exportó a Irlanda servicios basados en el conocimiento por más de 390 millones de dólares. Además, en los últimos 15 años, la Argentina ha sido una importante plataforma para la creación y el crecimiento de nuevos unicornios. Actualmente existen 14 empresas unicornios creados en nuestro país. Creemos que los gobiernos deben trabajar de manera conjunta con el sector privado a fin de fomentar la producción de hidrógeno verde a gran escala, lo cual ayudará a mitigar las problemáticas del cambio climático. La Argentina también es un actor relevante en energías de transición y renovables, incluyendo la solar, la eólica y la biomasa. Confiamos en que este foro sea un punto de partida hacia otros encuentros orientados a promover el intercambio económico y comercial entre Irlanda y nuestra región. Me despido deseando a todos una fructífera jornada de trabajo.
So thank you very much to Minister Cafiro. Just to note that after the next speaker, we will have a short break and we'll be then resuming at 11:15. But before that, I am personally particularly excited to be introducing this speaker. For the last couple of years, Ireland has been forging a much closer relationship with the state of Baja California in northwestern Mexico, which has a population of some 4 million and sits on the border, of course, with California and part of the really dynamic region of San Diego together with Tijuana. It's a wonderful state, and we're really honoured that joining us here this morning is Rodolfo Andrade, the Undersecretary for the Economy and Innovation for the government of Baja California. As Irish Ambassador, I've had the privilege of visiting Baja California on a number of occasions, and particularly the incredible city of Tijuana, and I can personally attest to the incredible dynamism in the city and in its business community. So I'm really looking forward to listening to the views and remarks from Undersecretary Andrade. If you can join me in welcoming Rodolfo Andrade, Undersecretary for Baja California, to the stage. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Would like to thank Ambassador Carolina and your team. Ambassador Carolina is our ambassador in Ireland. I would like a big round of applause for Ambassador Carolina. Maeve, it's an honor to visit you every time we do our roadshow in Mexico City with the embassies, and to welcome you a few times now to your home in Baja California. Also, thank you very much, Rory and Blaine, for this great event. And I have a brief video that I would like to share. I don't know if you have that ready. Well, this is a brief video about what Baja California is, and we would like to invite everyone here to visit our state. But I have a very brief presentation. I know everybody is looking for the break, but it's going to be quite entertaining and fast. So I would like to talk to about not only Baja California, but also the opportunity that Mexico poses to the Irish economy. Next one, please. And I want to start with a brief story about one day I was talking to a very good friend of mine that's used to be a VP of an Irish company that we had in our region in Baja California. The company was called Upright, and they did metal mechanic lifts. And I was talking to Frank, and he said, you know what, Rudy? And we were having dinner and drinking a beer. He was drinking Modelo, I was drinking Guinness. And he said, you know what? We have a lot of things to share. And we are more like close cousins with the Mexican culture, with the Mexicans. I said, why? Well, we're both very creative, and we like to have a good time. We're very high context. We like to shout, and we like to dance, and we have a great time. We're also very hardworking as a country, as individuals. Both Irish and Mexicans are really hardworking, courageous. We've even fought wars together, the Irish and the Mexicans. And most of the country is Catholic, so we share that as well. And we were hearing U2, the rock band. So we also like great rock music. And also we brew great beer, both countries. So, you know, the relationship between Ireland and Mexico is very strong. Next one, please. And you know, trade between both countries, we understand, should be a lot bigger. Right now, it's 2.6 billion, which grew 11% from 2021 to 2022. The main products sold by Mexico to Ireland are related to medical devices, electronic and processing equipment. And the states in Mexico that sold those devices are actually our state, Baja, Jalisco, and Nuevo León, which are very important states in Mexico. The main products sold by Ireland to Mexico are substance related to beverages, plasma, biotech, and medical products. And the states that bought these products are the Mexico City region and Baja California. So trade between our regions is very strong. Next one, please. And strategic sectors we also have been sharing with Ireland. And I've been talking for some years now with different companies. And I know that Ireland right now is a big hub for corporate investment from big companies that look at Ireland as the door to Europe. But also you have a great advanced manufacturing and design, same as the Mexican economy. Life sciences is very big. It's very big all over Mexico, especially in Baja California, but all over Mexico, life sciences, be it medical devices, biotech, pharma, electronics and semiconductors. Now with the new CHIP Act, and be it the European CHIP Act or the American CHIP Act, and the new geopolitical aspect of this, regional production of the value chain for semiconductors is extremely important. And we know that this is strategic for a lot of reasons. Also, software development in both countries, be it software development for different industries, or be it digital animation and software, as well as big data and cloud computing. Next one, please. I'm going to talk now and try to dive into where we see possible opportunities for Irish companies. And one is being where you can find a big market. We understand that trade is a two-way street. It's not only seeing what you can invest as you look for a cost-efficient production center, but also where the market is. And I think that's very important. market has to drive where you're investing. So give you an example, Baja California right now is the #1 state in the amount of foreign companies that export from Baja California, over 1,000 companies under the Maquila or IMEX programs. Next one, please. And I'm going to start in this graphic, which is a map of our state. And you can see mega regions all over Mexico, especially in the border region with the United States to the north, but also very specific mega regions regarding specific sectors. Center of the country toward the east and north is the automotive cluster of Mexico. So you'll find most of the automotive assembly plants located in that region. Our region is a very diversified area, especially because we have a huge neighbor in California and Arizona as well. So the southwest of the United States and the northwest of Mexico have a very symbiotic relationship. Every day, people cross the border, and over 130,000 people cross the Tijuana border each day. So it's the most crossed border in the world, as well as Mexicali and other of our border cities. But this generates a very interesting opportunity for investment. Having a mega region with a population of over 50 million people, and also with a GDP of over 3.5 trillion. This is a very, very interesting concept where you can locate an investment and look at this specific market, generating cost efficiency, obviously, but also engineering and talent opportunities for your companies. You would be part of what is now almost the same size as Germany, an economy almost the same size as the German economy. Baja California has 5 regions, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the different sectors that we think could be very interesting for companies, Irish companies, to look at this specific market. We also encourage not only foreign direct investment, but also joint ventures of companies that would like to be in this specific market. It's very important to see if you would find an interesting partner through the embassy or through the Mexican-Irish Chamber. Okay? Next one, please. Aerospace is very important in our region. We export every year over $2 billion. Next one, please. Some of the main companies that some of you may know have a home in Baja California. Next one, please. And I want to focus in life sciences, which I know is extremely important for the Irish economy. Altogether, Southern California and Baja California have, all in all, together corporate investment in medical devices of over $250 billion, both sides of the border. And you will find not only assembly plants in the Mexican side of the border, but you also find big data and engineering centers, as well as design centers in the border region of Baja California, serving and partnering with the US companies as well. Next one, please. You can see emblematic life science companies that we have in the region. Next one, please. And this is a graph of a human body. This is what is being done right now in our mega region. And you may find this very interesting in a sense that a lot of those parts and a lot of those different services are not only in assembly of medical devices, but there's also biotech, biogenetics that's being done. And there's also what we call the famous medical tourism. I was recently, yesterday, I was in Saxony in Bio City. And there's interest from companies in Germany to see what opportunities they may have for treatment for the medical tourism sector that we have in the region. We attend over 4 million Americans and Canadians across the border to get attention, not only dental, but also orthopedic, oncology, as well as cardiovascular attention. So it's a very unique region to see other market opportunities. Next one, please. Also, electronics is very big in our region. Next one. Some of our main companies. Next one. And also semiconductor packaging and testing. Out of the 5 big semiconductor companies that are located in Mexico, we have 3. Next one. Which are Skyworks Infineon, which you may know. It's out of Munich in Germany. And Qualcomm out of San Diego. And Qualcomm is not only developing semiconductor design there, but it's also a research center. They just opened a research campus in Tijuana, where they will be employing 500 professionals, engineering masters and PhDs. That is pretty unique. And that basically says what type of talent we are developing in Mexico. Next one, please. Also, automotive is important in our region. We have, next one, we have 2 big plants, as you saw, the big Toyota plant that's producing the Tacoma truck, as well as Kenworth, which is part of the Packard Group, which owned DAF here in Germany, or in Germany. Next one, please. And especially, I would like to focus on Irish investment in Mexico. There's over 160 companies that operate in Mexico, which Irish capital. And next one, please. 4 of the main ones are in Baja California. Ken, thank you very much for your investment, and I know Hugh from Aptiv is here too. Thank you very much. And we really appreciate your investment in our state, but also you're there because you found a market. You found a big market opportunity. We know we've talked about nearshoring, friendshoring, and everything shoring. Things are happening. It's a new geo relocation. So it's a great opportunity, not only to find where to invest, but also to joint venture. Now, regions in Mexico have grown organically and have had the opportunity to develop their own expertise. So you don't have to invest a lot in capital equipment necessarily. You may find a regional partner to joint venture and to supply the regional industry. So there is different ways of landing an investment and looking for a market in Mexico. The biggest opportunity lies in having the information that you need to look at the right opportunity to suit your expertise. Next one, please. So these companies are in the automotive, electronics, packaging, metal mechanic, and metal finishing area. Next one, please. And they're developing 6,000 jobs as we speak with 9 manufacturing sites in our region. And the last one, please. I think one of the biggest opportunities, and I know that a lot of regions have a lot of talent, and I think all over Mexico right now, you may find that talent is the key driver. You can compete now, you cannot compete worldwide only as a cost efficiency center. Cost efficiency centers can change everywhere. But when you go and you find a value center, and value centers only are based with talent. If you have talent, you have value. So Mexico has talent, Mexico has value. We invite you to see our country as a partner. We invite you to see our country as the door to America. And we know that Ireland is the door to Europe. Thank you very much. And as we say in Mexico, mi casa es tu casa. Thank you.